Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. One of the things that I hear people talk a lot about as they grow and scale is this idea of innovation. What is innovation? What does it even mean? Where does one even get started with innovation? Today, my guest, Robyn M. Bolton, will be talking about unlocking innovation. Now, anybody can talk about innovation. If you think of companies that do it well, Robyn's worked for many of them. As part of her career, she has her own practice now. She worked for P&G on some very, very cool brands. What I believe to be true, and Robyn, you can correct me, is, part of the success of these companies tested over time and years is really a replicatable process of understanding what the market needs, what the market's willing to accept, being able to work and succeed in a flurry of competition, and to be able to do it for something that will last a long time. Do I have innovation basically summed up? Is there anything else that I am missing about innovation? And then why don't you fill in the blanks or anything else I haven't covered yet?
Yeah, I love it. So you're right. Innovation is a fairly replicable process. There's tons of frameworks out there. Just Google innovation process and you'll probably get like 15,000. So the activities of innovation, the things you need to do, yeah, totally. What I found out through my career is that all of that stuff, I call it the architecture of innovation, is necessary, but not sufficient for success. And as something that I'm sure will not at all surprise you or your listeners, what is absolutely essential for success is how leadership behaves when they're being asked to innovate. And that is far more of a crapshoot and far more of a challenge than people realize.
So does innovation lead the company? It's what you said, the company needs to lead the innovation, but it also, feels like it's a balance of that. And then, I thought a team led innovation, not everybody at the team led innovation. So tell me a little bit more about organizations, CEOs, leaders that are in an innovation seat or seeing innovation around them. What are some of the maybe reflections they should have to be successful in this endeavor?
Yeah. So the very first one is what I call channeling your inner George Costanza, which I'm pretty sure no one has accused George of being a role model. But in one episode of Seinfeld, you want to be George. And in that episode, what he did is he realized, he was unemployed, he was single, living at home with his parents because he followed his instincts. And he's like, so if my instincts are wrong, then doing the opposite of my instincts will be right. And, he does that for a whole episode, ends up with a job at the Yankees, a girlfriend, a great apartment. And for those leaders in the hot seat, whether the CEO or whatever the title is, you got to be George and do the opposite of your instincts, because your instincts that got you to that leadership position are all about operating, right? It's like, hey, I've done this before. I know what's going on. I can, predict cause and effect. I can kind of sense what competitors are going to do. Like, you have this, if not like the facts, you have an intuition about things. And that is awesome. And that is important. And you need to like run with that to be successful when you're operating. But innovating is totally the opposite because it's something new. So you've never done it before. So you don't have instincts based on experience. You don't know what cause and effect is. And so if you run into doing something new with all the same behaviors and the mindsets and everything that you run into doing stuff you've always done, things are going to go sideways really quickly and innovation will fail. It has a high failure rate, and that's what happens.
So how do you reconcile track record, a process, a history, and the ideal of scalability, which is basically doing a thing over again, and because it works that first time, with innovation, trying new things, adapting new processes, shortening, lead times, etc. How can you reconcile those? Do you have to wear a separate proverbial hat? Do you, what's the process for a branding or brand leader, CEO to embark on?
So there are some people, and I agree in part and disagree in part. It's like you can't have the same person doing both. You got to have one person who's doing scale and making things bigger, better, faster, cheaper. And you need to have a totally separate person creating new things. And that works up to some point in an organization, but eventually it all comes to the CEO, right? And so the CEO, nobody else, the CEO eventually has to weigh, these two worlds of doing things better, faster, cheaper, and, you know, essentially innovation. Like there's going to be risk, there's going to be stuff that doesn't work out. And how do you reconcile those? And so, first thing I say, super tactical, is as soon as, when somebody comes and presents to you, like our instinct is to give them an answer, be like, I agree. Or did you think about, like, it's to make a statement back, right? Because like we have the answers. Innovation, you don't have the answers. So as soon as you feel that instinct to make a decision or give a direction, stop and ask a question, because you really have to be in learning mode when you're creating something new.
So can you give me an example, obviously without breaking confidentiality, of, when you came up with one of those innovations, and I say you came up with, the team that you're working on, whatever, going through that process, even self-reflecting for presumably working with other folks to say, hey, are we going down the I know path, or are we going down the curiosity path? And as specific as possible, it would be great.
Yeah, of course. So I'll go way back to my days working on Swiffer, and actually working on the launch of Swiffer WetJet. And so, we have, it's good P&G brand management team. We have our nice, neat launch plan. Everything's good to go. We're about 9 months away from actually launching into the market. And we find out that a competitor is coming in with something that was pretty similar. So immediate panic, because that's what you do. First thing you do, panic. Second thing you do is try to calm yourself. And P&G, for a lot of good reasons, like most big companies, is very process driven, like very rigid. Here are the rules, here are the timelines for everything. Makes a ton of sense. Except when you're trying to do something new and you got to learn. So, we go in and we're like, we have to do something to kind of pre-launch WetJet. We got to get the word out about it beforehand and at least create the impression that we're first to market and get people thinking about it first, so that when we actually launch into Walmart and Kmart and all that stuff, because Kmart still existed, people feel like, oh, we know WetJet, who is this other person? And we went to one general manager, said, hey, we want to do this launch plan, this pre-launch plan. And they're like, no, that's outside of process. You can't do that. You can't sell in alternative channels because that'll upset Walmart. You can't run ads using a different ad mechanism. You can't do it. It's against the rules. No. And we're like, we don't like that answer. So then we went, like every good teenager, we went and found another parent. and so we went to a different general manager, and that general manager, much more of an innovation mindset, and said, here's the plan. And he's like, well, you can't use any of our existing vendors for this. Who are you going to use? And that little shift, instead of just saying, no, you can't do it, was like, how we usually do things isn't going to work. So how do you plan on doing this new thing? And it opened up a conversation that, once he understood that we actually had thought through the how of our what, he's like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Approved. Go.
Because I think it's just interesting about that. In that case, you were disrupting the market, and then somebody was disrupting your plan, so that you had to disrupt that plan. And I think that, at least, in 2025, as we're looking, the way that things used to work are kind of not working well, or not working as much anymore. So these things are eroding. And so innovation may be a new product, innovation may be a new process, but you need to then look at, hey, is the architecture slowing you down, stopping you? Are the behaviors that are aligning with that supporting you or not? And then culturally, are people ready for that change? Throw in generational leaders and people that have been there, you're going to have this mishmash of people who have a different undertone and, let's call it, appetite for innovation. Slow and steady wins the race, or that there's no right answer. I mean, depending on who you ask. How can, as part of their overall strategy process, how can leaders start teeing themselves up for the need to innovate, whether you're getting disrupted now or, disrupting soon in the future, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a great question, because goodness knows there's more uncertainty than ever out there. And so when I'm talking to leaders and, we're grappling with uncertainty, I tell them the story. This is a true story. It does not make me look very smart, but I'll tell it anyways, which is, probably when I was about 10 or 12, my dad decided it was time for me to learn to mow the grass. And we had, push mower, you kind of push two levers together, and it power, but you still had to guide it.
Mm.
And so he's like, okay. And my dad was very particular about the grass. There had to be perfect circles around every tree, and in addition to the lines across the lawn. And so teaching me how to use the mower, he goes inside. I am freaked out because one, I don't want to do this. And two, I'm freaked out about how precise this has to be. And so I put it on high speed because the faster we go, the faster I will be done and able to do what I want. And so I start going. And I come to the first tree and I start freaking out because I'm like, I don't remember how to make the circle. I don't know what to do. And the mower is still going, still proceeding. And eventually I hit the trunk. And I'm so scared that I'm like clenching actually tighter and tighter. And eventually I mowed over the tree. The tree survived. It was bald, half bald for most of its remaining life. And if I had just let go, everything would have stopped. And I could have reassessed and started moving the mower around the tree. And as I explained to you, like, that's what we're doing. We're in this new place and we're just gripping tighter and tighter and tighter to the safety net, to this thing that we have. And there's a chance we're going to kill the tree. And so, one of the really cool things I think about innovation is all of the tools that we have for it, all of the architecture, it's always been used to create something new. But really at its heart, it's all about minimizing risk and hedging your bets. And so you can take the tools that we've always just used for innovation and said, oh, these are innovation tools. And you can actually use them on your current business with your current decisions, as a way to kind of let go, slow things down for a moment so that you can reassess, minimize risk, and take another direction.
I like that you use the word hedging. So
Yes.
for your story. Oh,
Yes.
I also see potential version that innovation or not innovation are like holding on too tightly. It just keeps getting you exactly what you got. Like it's a thing you're destroying your future prospects by just sticking with that. And it's obviously not doom and gloom for all organizations, but there are things that happen either internally that cause you to stop moving forward or externally. And so just being ready, mindful, and supportive of that process. Any other cool stories that you'd like to share for our listeners to think about as they're, again, positioning these things, whether they're actively in it or readying themselves for innovation, whether directly from the book or otherwise?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of my favorite stories, and this is working with a client, is a big like industrial manufacturer. And they did big industrial manufacturing things. And I'm working with engineers who are talking about PSI and flow rates. I'm like, as a marketing major, got nothing. And during one of our meetings, they had a customer call say, hey, the pump that you sold us in 1954 is starting to break down. So we need to replace it. And during one of the breaks, that they went into the warehouse, found a replacement, came back. They're like, okay, we still have a 1972 model that we can send to you. And I was just like, wow, the pace of innovation in this industry is a whole different tempo than what we think of and what we're used to. But it spoke so much to the mindset of the people who were there, like why there wasn't the sense of urgency. They had less of a sense of urgency as, the engineers and the designers and things like that, because you could, in 2014 or 2024, ship out the 1972 model and be okay, versus the leaders who had a much bigger sense of urgency. And so it was that story of like, oh, this is why everyone's kind of talking past each other and not doing what the other person is saying. And so now this is how we have to approach building the culture and teaching the tools and really building a capability within the team, which ultimately we did. And they came in at 4x what they needed to do in like a third of the time they had. So it was great results, but without really getting into people's heads and understanding like this is what's going on, this is what's driving their behavior, couldn't have done it.
Yeah. That's so interesting. The acceptability, like today, I was going to write a blog post or share something, and there's like, oh, from 2023. And I'm like, well, the answers are still correct from 2023. It's like 2 years ago. But, you see that and you're like, whoa, must be old, must be wrong. Well, now and I don't have a 50-year-old hose that's still getting the job done. And it's getting the job done, but, be there ways to do it. Where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work? Obviously, pick up your book and have it as some shared reading for their innovation teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my firm's website, milezero.io, and the zero is spelled out, Zero. You can also go to LinkedIn. Of course, I'm on there. And to learn more about the book and to download a free copy of the first chapter, just go to unlockinginnovation.co.
Awesome. I love it. And there's some cool stuff on the website in terms of looking at some of the, context that we talk about today. So happy to
Yep.
share that. I think it's going to be more. Innovation is one of you could look at it as a buzzword. I think as people understand it as a process and a set of
Mhm.
preconditions, I think it'll drive forward things. So Robyn, thanks for being here today. It was a pleasure and all the best moving forward.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
Folks, my guest today, Robyn Bolton, unlocking innovation, driving repeatable growth through innovation. I think one of the key things is for organizations to find that next thing, whether it's surviving, growing in a red ocean, or it's moving into a blue ocean, or frankly, just looking at all of the tools, processes, structures that are evolving, daily ways of working. It's not just a task, it's a mindset and it's an environmental precondition. The successful companies have it. They have a process, one that supports them instead of constrains them. So the way to think about it, how big or wide is the track to let people be successful? I appreciate you being here. Hopefully enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, do all the things kids do. Tell your friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.